Hollywood royalty meets real royalty, and neither backs down. When Meghan Markle appeared on Live with Kelly and Mark, nobody expected it to become the most explosive celebrity interview in television history. Tensions ran high, accusations flew, and when it all came to a head, Meghan was told to leave Live, on air. What caused such a meltdown? What really happened behind the scenes? Stick around, because this story will leave you speechless. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments. You're not going to want to miss what unfolds next. Meghan Markle stood up, her face pale, her voice shaking with emotion. She looked straight at Kelly Ripa and said, "You know what the real tragedy is? I actually respected you once." Then, without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked off the set. The studio was silent, frozen. Cameras kept rolling, but nobody moved. That was the moment the morning show world changed. Now, let us rewind. It started like any other broadcast of Live with Kelly and Mark. The usual upbeat music played. The crowd clapped and cheered. Kelly Ripa smiled brightly at the camera. Mark Consuelos gave a quick nod as he adjusted his mic. Everything looked normal on the outside, but behind the scenes, the air was thick with tension. Everyone on set felt it. Something was different today. There were whispers in the control room, pacing in the hallways. Meghan Markle was the scheduled guest, and even before she arrived, the energy shifted. No one could quite say why. Maybe it was the build-up from the media. Maybe it was her recent headlines. Maybe it was something unspoken. But whatever it was, everyone felt it. Kelly flipped through her notes. Mark checked his earpiece twice. Producers gave last-minute directions in low, urgent voices. Meghan's arrival was just minutes away. The cameras were ready. The audience was in their seats. The lights blazed down on the stage. Nobody knew what was coming, but they could all feel that this would not be just another interview. The storm was coming. They just did not know how hard it would hit. Meghan Markle walked into the studio with her head high and her expression calm. But there was something about her that made everyone pause. She wore a sleek cream blazer with matching trousers, polished yet minimal. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup soft but intentional. She smiled at the crew, but it felt tight, like something behind it was being held back. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights bounced off her perfectly. The audience clapped, but not too loudly. Even the applause felt different. Meghan gave a small wave, then sat down slowly in the guest chair. She crossed her legs, straightened her posture, and folded her hands in her lap. It was the kind of body language that looked open at first, but the closer you looked, the more guarded it seemed. Kelly smiled wide and greeted her with warmth, but her eyes told a different story. She kept glancing toward Mark. Mark gave Meghan a friendly nod, but he also raised his eyebrows at Kelly for just a second. It was subtle, but enough to say, "Did you feel that?" Kelly gave the smallest nod back. She felt it too. The studio crew stood by the cameras, unusually still. Normally, they whispered directions or checked notes, but now they just waited. Even the producers in the booth had gone quiet. The energy in the room had shifted the moment Meghan entered. This was not going to be an easy interview. Everybody sensed that. If you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. We are just getting started, and trust me, it gets intense. The interview started off the way most do. Kelly asked Meghan about her morning routine. Meghan smiled and said she had some green juice, did a bit of yoga, and tried to stay grounded. Mark chimed in with a joke about how he could barely touch his toes, and the audience laughed. For a moment, it all seemed smooth, friendly, easy. They talked about her new podcast, her recent charity event, and her thoughts on motherhood. Meghan answered politely. Her voice was calm and steady, but her eyes scanned the room more than usual. She looked like someone trying to stay in control, not someone enjoying the moment. Then Kelly mentioned how the producers had sent Meghan a few pre-show questions to review. It was meant to be casual. Just small talk about how these shows work. Behind the scenes, but Meghan shifted in her seat. She smiled, but this time it felt sharper. She said, "Yes, I saw those questions. Some of them felt off, a little invasive." Actually, the room went quiet. Mark looked down at his note cards. Kelly raised her eyebrows, caught off guard but kept smiling. Meghan kept going. "I understand this is live television, but when you are asking about private family matters, it can cross a line, especially when it is framed as entertainment." Kelly's smile started to fade. Her voice was softer now. "We try to keep things respectful. Nothing personal was meant to offend you." Meghan nodded slowly but replied, "Sometimes the intent does not match the impact." That was the moment something shifted. The friendly tone was still there, but it felt like everyone was walking on glass now. Mark sat back slightly in his chair. Kelly glanced toward the crew without moving her head much. Her hands rested more tightly in her lap. The small talk was over. The air was getting colder. The first crack had just appeared. Kelly leaned forward just slightly and asked, "Do you feel like you have been treated unfairly by the press, or has some of it been a misunderstanding?" It was a question loaded with layers. On the surface, it sounded soft, but underneath, it was firm, direct. Meghan took a deep breath before answering. She said, "I think people forget that I was not born into that world. I stepped into it, and the pressure, the rules, the expectations, they were crushing. So yes, I believe a lot of what has been said about me is not true. Some of it is twisted. Some of it is created completely." Mark looked up from his notes. He kept his tone even, but asked, "But what about the critics who say you control the narrative too tightly? That your team manages every detail, every story, every interview? How do you respond to that?" Meghan sat still for a moment. Her hands tightened in her lap. When people come at you non-stop, you learn to protect yourself. That is not manipulation. That is survival. If you do not take control of your own story, someone else will rewrite it for you. Kelly jumped in quickly. "But does that mean everything else is false? People have called out contradictions in your interviews. There is a difference between truth and carefully crafted messaging." Meghan gave a short laugh that had no humor in it. "So we are doing that today. Calling me a liar, just in a nicer way." The room fell silent for a beat. Meghan looked toward the audience, then back at Kelly. "The truth is not always neat. It is messy, but it is mine." Mark cleared his throat and asked, "Do you believe the public still trusts you?" Meghan looked tired now. Her voice dropped slightly. "I do not know, but I know I have stopped trying to convince people." That line hung in the air. It was no longer a celebrity chat. This was a battle of perception, control, and the right to speak your truth. The tension was real. Now, neither side was backing down. Meghan's posture shifted. She uncrossed her legs and leaned forward, resting her hands on her knees. Her voice started to crack slightly as she spoke. "I came here thinking this would be a fair conversation. I wanted to talk about projects that matter, about service, about family, but it feels like something else is happening." Kelly stayed calm but did not soften. "We are asking questions because people still have questions. It is not personal. But when you say one thing in one interview and something different months later, the public notices. That is just reality." Meghan's eyes flashed. She replied, "And do you think that reality applies to everyone, or just me? Because I have seen countless interviews where people contradict themselves, and nobody calls them a liar. But when I do it, suddenly I am calculated, cold, fake." Mark tried to ease the moment. "We are not saying that. We are just asking where the line is between genuine growth and changing the story." Meghan's voice grew firmer. "The line is when people stop listening, when everything I say is picked apart, framed through a lens of doubt. I have made mistakes. But I have also been honest in ways that made me a target." Then came the moment that changed the room. Kelly looked directly at her and said, "But can you understand why some people feel like you play the victim while keeping control of the narrative?" There was a long pause. Meghan stared at Kelly. Her lips tightened. Her shoulders rose slightly, like she was holding something in. Then she said, quietly, "That is cruel." The audience let out a soft gasp. A few people exchanged looks. You could hear the shift. From tension to disbelief, it was like everyone knew they had crossed into something raw and personal. Now, this was no longer just a bad interview. This was unraveling. Control was slipping, and everyone felt it. Mark gently brought the conversation back by asking, "Can we talk about your children for a moment? You have been open about wanting to protect their privacy, but some people say that, when you speak publicly about them, you invite more attention." Meghan paused. Her face softened slightly at the mention of her kids, but her eyes stayed cautious. "My children are the most important part of my life. I speak about them when it matters, especially when it ties into broader issues like mental health or identity, but that does not mean I want their lives in the tabloids." Kelly looked down for a moment, then looked straight at Meghan. "But you have brought them into interviews. You talked about Archie and Lilibet in your docuseries. That is not privacy. That is spotlight." Meghan leaned back, clearly frustrated. "There is a difference between telling your own story and letting strangers tell it for you. I speak about them in my own voice. I do not hand them over to paparazzi." Kelly's tone sharpened. "But when you say your family should not be in the media, and then sign a deal with a streaming giant to show your home life, people are going to question that. You cannot have it both ways." Meghan's voice rose slightly. "I did not say I want zero visibility. I said I want control over how they are seen. There is a huge difference. Everyone thinks they are entitled to our lives, and it is exhausting." Mark stepped in. Was the royal family part of that exhaustion? Meghan gave a long sigh. "Yes, the lack of protection, the headlines, the racism, and when I spoke up, I was told to stay quiet, to deal with it." That silence almost broke me. Kelly nodded slowly but pushed again. "But you chose to leave. You chose a life outside of the institution. Is this still about the royal family, or is it about image now?" Meghan's voice was sharp. "You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy defending my mental health to strangers? You think I brought this on myself?" Kelly replied, "You brought them into this." The room froze. Meghan stared at her. Her jaw tightened. She looked like she was about to say something, but stopped. A few audience members gasped quietly. The energy turned thick and tense. This was no longer just a conversation. It was a clash of values, choices, and very real pain. Meghan sat up, straighter, her expression firm now. The tension in the room had thickened. She looked at Kelly and said, "You are twisting my words. You are making it sound like I created this chaos on purpose. That is not only unfair, it is gaslighting." Kelly blinked, caught off guard. "I am asking what people want to know. We are not here to attack you." Meghan's voice was low but strong. "But that is exactly what this feels like. I came here thinking we would talk about my work, about healing, about moving forward. Instead, I feel like I walked into an ambush." Mark leaned in, trying to calm the moment. "Let us take a breath here. Meghan, we appreciate you coming, but you know people are still trying to understand. There is a lot of emotion around your story." She turned to him. "Then why frame it like this? Why not lead with compassion instead of cornering me? If you really cared, this would not be happening." The silence was loud. Kelly looked down, then back up. Her tone was more serious now. "No one is trying to hurt you, but public figures have to answer hard questions. That is what journalism is." Meghan shook her head. "No, this is not journalism. This is spectacle. I agreed to a conversation, not a courtroom. You talk about mental health but then ignore mine when I sit in this chair." Mark tried again. "No one is ignoring your pain." Meghan shot back. "Then why am I defending it right now?" A long pause followed. No one moved. The audience stayed silent. What had started as a daytime interview now felt like a pressure cooker, the kind where words stop being questions and start becoming wounds. And for Meghan, this was the moment she made it clear. She felt set up, betrayed, and completely alone on that stage. Meghan leaned forward, voice rising just above a shaky breath. "I am done. This is toxic. I should have never come here." Mark held up a hand, trying to slow things down. "Let us take a moment, Meghan. We can step back," and she cut him off. "No, I have had enough. This is not an interview. It is a trap dressed up as daytime television. You are not asking questions. You are taking shots." Kelly's tone shifted. Steady, cold. "We gave you a platform. You used it to paint yourself as the only victim in a story that has hurt a lot of people." Meghan's eyes narrowed. "I came here to talk about rebuilding, about work that matters. But you turned it into a courtroom." The tension cracked. Wide open, audience members shifted in their seats. Some gasped. No one dared to move. Kelly stood up slowly from her chair, her voice calm but firm. "This interview is over." Meghan blinked. "Excuse me." Kelly met her gaze. "You need to leave, now." A pause hung in the air like a warning bell. Meghan stared at Kelly for a beat too long, then pushed back from her chair. She stood tall, silent, then without another word, turned and walked off the set. Mark looked down at the table, then out at the camera. He looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came. The room remained frozen, the kind of silence that stays long after the camera's cut. This was not just a segment gone wrong. It was the moment everything cracked open, and once it did, there was no going back. Meghan's voice cracked as she leaned in, eyes locked on Kelly. "I do not have to take this. You brought me here under false pretenses. This is not a conversation. This is an ambush." Mark tried again. To calm things down, he spoke softly, trying to regain control. "No one is trying to trap you, Meghan. We just want the truth, the full picture." Meghan shook her head. Her frustration was pouring out now. "This is not journalism. This is entertainment disguised as concern. I came here thinking this was a place of honesty. Clearly, I was wrong." Kelly stayed seated, but her posture stiffened. Her voice stayed even, but the warmth had vanished. "You came here with your version of events, Meghan. But you are not the only one who gets to speak." That was when Meghan stood up. Her chair scraped sharply against the floor. She glanced at the camera, then back at Kelly. "Then maybe I should go, since clearly, my presence is not welcome." The air in the studio felt heavy. No one said a word. The crew froze. The audience leaned in, not breathing. Kelly finally stood, too. Her voice, steady as ever, cut through the silence. "This interview is over. You need to leave." Meghan blinked, stunned. For a second, she looked like she might respond, but instead, she gave a small shake of her head, turned, and walked off the set. Mark stayed still, his eyes following her. Kelly did not look away. It was a moment that would replay across headlines and timelines for days. But in that studio, all that was left was the sound of a set gone silent. Meghan was almost at the door when she stopped. She turned around, just once, and looked straight at the cameras. Her voice was steady, but her words carried weight. "People will twist this. Let them. I know my truth. And I am done giving pieces of myself to be picked apart." Then she walked out, the door clicked shut behind her. And just like that, the storm had passed, but the silence that followed was louder than anything. Set on camera, Kelly stood where she was for a moment. Then she turned back to face the audience. Eyes calm, voice clear. "Well," she said, "that was not the conversation we expected, but it was real, and sometimes, real is uncomfortable. She gave a small nod. No smile this time. Just a pause. Then, we will be back after the break. The screen faded to black dot inside the studio. No one moved right away. The crew glanced at each other, unsure what to say. The audience sat frozen, still processing what had just happened. It felt like history had been made on live television. Not because of the guest, not because of the drama, but because of how raw it all became. Later clips would go viral. Headlines would spin. But in that room, the only thing that lingered was a deep, unsettled quiet. What just happened was more than a celebrity interview. It was a collision. Meghan walked in with confidence. She left in frustration. Along the way, we saw charm, tension, accusations, and finally, a blow-up that no one saw coming. From the start, things felt off. The small talk turned sharp. Questions cut deeper. Defenses rose. Meghan stood by her truth. Kelly pushed for answers. Mark tried to keep peace, but the mood kept shifting. The turning point was not one single moment. It was a slow burn. A look here, a pause there, and then it snapped. Meghan said she felt ambushed. Kelly claimed she was just asking what people wanted to know, the truth. Maybe it lives somewhere in between. Was Meghan unfairly cornered, or did she just not expect real pushback? That is the question people are now asking. What do you think? Was Meghan right to walk off, or did Kelly and Mark cross a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more dramatic celebrity showdowns like this.